Hello, my name's Vincent Costa. Welcome to my showreel for sound design and implementation using Wwise. For this demo, I modified the game Cube, which is freely available from Audiokinetic and is reminiscent of old-school shooters like Quake and Doom. Every sound you hear is completely original, from footsteps, to weapons, to monsters, to items. Let me take you through my process. I first used Wwise's capture log to create an asset list of sounds I would need to implement in the game. I divided this list into 4 categories: player, weapons, creatures, and items. I like to use my own original recordings as much as possible. Using a portable stereo field recorder, I made recordings of my own footsteps in different environments, and using different footwear, in order to capture a versatile range of transients and impacts. I even tried recording on some surfaces that were less than realistic. After some light EQing, editing, and layering, the footsteps were imported into random containers within Wwise. I added pitch randomization for even greater variety, and I used 4 surface materials controlled by in-game switches: concrete, tile, grass, and gravel. For the player's grunts of pain or exertion, I simply used my own voice, but pitched down. I felt that a guy who kills demons with a shotgun should be at least a little bit lower in register than a 20-something Canadian audio engineer. Hey. Again, I really wanted to record my own material, so I contacted some armorers and gun club members in my local area and arranged a few dates for field recording. With the help of some experts, I made multi-track recordings of 2 shotguns, 3 rifles, and 2 handguns. I also took home a handful of different caliber casings to record them being dropped on the ground. Now, the one thing I learned about recording guns is that, especially if you don't allow your inputs to clip during recording, the recordings on their own sound something like this. And that just won't do. So let's beef it up. First, I added the stereo distance mic. I mixed in a pitched down version. And I added 3 layers of filtered pink noise to end up with this. In addition to the random containers used in the footsteps implementation, each weapon's fire event triggers a specific sequence within Wwise. Let's take the shotgun for example. There's the initial burst, then the weapon moves slightly to the left and is pumped. Then the cartridge is ejected from the right and tumbles onto the ground. Using Wwise, I set the pump noise to always come from slightly to the left, and then I defined several paths within the stereo field for the ejected cartridges to follow once ejected from the firearm. One of these paths is randomly selected each time the weapon is fired. This kind of attention to detail was applied to each weapon with specific adjustments to suit their individual needs. Let's listen to the final product of each weapon. Shotgun. Rifle. Machine gun. Rocket launcher. Obviously, I couldn't record a real rocket launcher here in southwestern Ontario, so I used a combination of sound libraries and synthesizers to create the launch, tail, and impact of the weapon. Creature sounds are a little more creatively challenging and rewarding because, unlike firearms, there is no example in the real world for how they should sound. This gave me the freedom to create whatever I imagined. I first played the game on mute and got a sense of each creature, how they moved and what they used to attack the player, what their death animations look like, etc. I really believe that sound design should help the visual media tell a story, and so it was important for me to get to know my casting characters before beginning to make noise. I would need 3 types of sound for each creature: hurt, dead, and aware for when the creature sees the player. Let's take a closer look at one example, the rhino. The The Rhino is a small robotic biped armed with machine guns. It's the enemy I hate to fight the most in the game because it's fast and deadly. Almost right away, I knew I wanted to subvert that player hatred into sympathy. It is kind of cute after all, by giving the Rhino a voice. I recorded my own voice deliberately hot enough to just clip, which I would exploit later on.
Ow. Ouch. That hurts.
I pitched that down while cranking the formant up, creating a robot voice.
Ow. Ouch. That hurts.
Now that clipping distortion from before sounds really cool after the processing. To further create the image of a malfunctioning machine, I recorded a guitar cable shorting out. I pitched that down and filtered out the lows. To the death sounds of the Rhino, I also added this dentist's drill, which I, surprise surprise, pitched down, reversed, and then time stretched. And this synthesizer patch. So that in the end, I had 4 layers that sound like this. Other creature sounds were made in a similar fashion, combining recordings of cows, monkeys, myself, and completely synthetic elements. Most item pickup sounds were simply a couple of layers of synthesizer bleeps and bloops. Typically I have 1 high and 1 low layer, and sometimes a third for a mid-range or for a special transient. One sound I'm proud of is this ice ball attack from the night enemies. It starts with the sound of an umbrella closing to get that whoosh leading up to a crisp attack. Then there's some glass shattering, and an edit I made of some snow and ice being crushed. Finally, everything is put through a bit of reverb to really give the player a sense of being chilled. Here are some other interesting features I used to make the world of Cube more believable. Once I chose a specific level to work on, I manually defined different reverb zones for every playable area in the level. These 4 zones correspond to 4 auxiliary buses within Wwise, for a hallway, a large room, a medium room, and outside. I used Wwise's internal effects to create a unique sonic fingerprint for each area. These parameters can also be blended as the player moves from one area to the next. For this teleporter unit, I created an emitter, which loops indefinitely, and used positional attenuation to adjust the level and filters as the player gets closer to or further from the teleporter. All of these design and implementation elements combine to form a soundscape that is action-packed, out of this world, and yet believable. Let's watch some of it in action. Thank you for taking the time to view my online showreel today. Once more, my name is Vincent Costa, and I am an audio engineer.